And we're here live. It's Mind Shifting with Mitch Mondays, or Mind Shifting with Mitch. And I'm Mitch, and my guest here, just as we had 2 weeks ago, is my good friend Josh Chernikov. And well, Josh, why don't you say hi?
Hey, or do you want me to say hi? Exactly, hi.
Either one. And
Thank you.
where are you right now?
Well, I'll update you. Since the last time I saw you, we went down to San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, and we completed a 4-year journey, getting our permanente. So we are now permanent residents of Mexico. We were able to check in on some land where we're building a house. We were able to see some family and friends. And then I flew from Mexico to New Mexico, of all places. And what do you know, Mitch? New Mexico looks a lot like old Mexico.
Well, it was part of it at one point until we
Oh,
stalled, right?
that's interesting. So now I am in New Mexico in a beautiful place uh, outside of Albuquerque at the IEI conference,
Hmm.
which IEI is well known to the folks who are in the education space. And it's a gathering of uh, people who are making an impact in the space, business owners getting a chance to mix and mingle, learn from, talk to, um, listen to superintendents and district administrators. So I'm here kind of in the middle of that, talking to superintendents and talking to business owners and, drinking a lot of coffee.
And we're here talking about Mexico and U.S. taking part of it, and
Talk
some of
about
it
a
in Texas.
conflict.
Talk about a conflict, but we're here more to talk about conflicts in business or in schools. And I guess the question is, why should we talk about conflicts? And I think that a lot of what we do in business ends up either conflict related or out and out conflicts. And it kind of, you start off with sales, to a certain extent. I would think sales is rife with potential conflicts. And do you see that also? And where do you see conflicts in sales?
I I'm not sure if I see necessarily conflicts. I think I see misalignment, and what we're talking a lot about here at IEI is just encouraging people on the business side
Hmm.
to listen to the district administrators and the superintendents who have needs and have wants. And when you listen to them, and this should sound very familiar to people who have heard me speak, when you listen to the superintendent or the district administrator or the teacher, you don't necessarily have to change your product because you've built your product and your product is there to work, but you are now listening to their messaging and you wrap that around their product, thus avoiding conflict because now they understand how you can help them.
So I'm going to back up a little bit, and let's just say that you're a person who has you created a product, and you're looking at a superintendent, and you're thinking, boy, my product can really help that superintendent. And so you go and you talk to that superintendent and you tell them what your product can do for them. And then either they stop listening, or they argue with you about why it doesn't, or they tell you it costs too much or something like that. And to me, that becomes then a conflict.
Um, I think less of a conflict for the superintendent and more of a conflict for you.
Hmm.
And mainly that conflict occurs in your own head. And you know this better, but I mean, I can say from my own experience, you start telling yourself stories about, well, that person is wrong, or I'm not good enough at what I do, or I need to go and change my whole MVP and start over.
Hmm.
So would you consider that conflict that occurs in your head, or does conflict have to be person to person?
Yeah, I'm uh, I'm thinking mostly in terms of person to person. Now, that conversation that's going on in your head is also kind of a conflict, and that's what's stopping you from being resourceful. Okay, because
Mhm.
as soon as you start that conversation, you can't win it by arguing. You can't win it by reasoning. You can't win it by grit. What you have to do in those circumstances, you have to really distract yourself so that you calm down those parts of your brain that are arguing with you. And once you've calmed them down, you can then start thinking about, well, what do I really want? What are the next steps? Um,
Mhm.
and uh, and that is an intra person or within yourself conflict. The other conflict is that you as a salesperson are thinking, I have this product. I'm telling this person, the superintendent, this principal, this teacher, about my product, and uh, they're rejecting me, or they're not listening, or they're arguing with me, or they think that it's too high, and clearly I can't offer it for a lower price, or I can't offer it free. I just want them to try it, and they're not listening, that then is an interperson, is a two-person conflict. You want them to do one thing, which is to buy your product, and at that point they want you to do something else, which is leave them alone, right?
Yeah, go away.
Okay. And to me, that's in the sales. I mean, and conflicts come up in management and working also, as a manager. You want your employees to do something, and you instruct them to do it, and they either do it, or in which case there's not necessarily a conflict, or they pretend that they're going to comply, or they don't really think through what they're doing. And um, and to be able to influence and really engage and motivate the employees is another form of communications that can result in conflict. Project management, results in conflict. Teaching, where you're teaching kids, and you're pretty clear, these, you want them to do their homework, you want them to prepare for their quizzes, you want them to prepare for their tests, you want them to work together on projects, and they're not doing it. And those are different types of conflicts also that we deal with. So,
Yeah. It's
uh,
interesting that as you were saying that, I thought you were gonna say you want them to brush their teeth and you want them to go to bed and you want them to eat their food. And as you're saying it, it's so clear that conflict, if we don't think of it as necessarily a bad thing,
mhm,
is really all over our lives,
right.
from work to personal. And what you are teaching um, is so helpful that it can um, help us inside the office or inside the home, because getting Camila, our daughter, uh, to I don't know. Actually, she's a pretty darn good kid. It's more
Right.
like me
Well,
getting me
you're,
to do my
yeah,
homework.
right.
Young Josh to do his actual homework, and uh, understanding why that's important and what the value is for that, or what the reward or the result will be, is not easy inside the home, just like it's not easy inside an office.
So conflicts occur in pretty much, or potential conflicts occur pretty much in practically any time we're dealing with another person. And one of the things that is helpful to know is, like, so what's going on inside our brain when there's a potential conflict, and when we're that salesperson, as an example, and we're trying to get the superintendent or the principal to buy from us, or when we're the manager trying to get an employee to do something and they're resisting it, or when we're an employee and we feel that something has to be done and we go to management and they resist it. What happens in the brain is that our survival parts of the brain start kicking in, and those survival parts of the brain are the ones that activate almost instantaneously, in like hundredths of a second, and they're there to make sure that we survive. That um, they are constantly assessing for danger or risk, and as soon as they detect danger or risk, they go into generally one of the three prime types of actions, which is, fight and flight and freeze. And to a large extent, that's how we are reacting when we detect that, oh my gosh, this person is resisting me. We go into fight, flight, or freeze. Or sometimes we go into something that, just what we've always done. We just go into habit. Um, or sometimes we just go along with the crowd. If we're an employee and the boss is haranguing us, we just, try to figure out what everybody else is doing, and react the same way. And once we're in those reactions, we have certain types of responses that we make. And actually, those responses tend to make the situations worse.
Mm.
So we would tend to respond by trying to reason with another person. We would tend to respond by, if we have power, trying to exert some power over the another person, trying to give them a sense of urgency that they have to do something. And just as our own survival parts of the brain cause us to fight, flight, or freeze, when another person detects that you're trying to reason with them, you're trying to convince them, you're trying to tell them that they're wrong, you're trying to walk over them, they then detect, oh my gosh, this person is attacking me. I have to go into fight,
Mm.
flight, or freeze mode back. And then the conflict becomes even worse. So we see that in sales situations. We see that in personal, with your child, or with your spouse. You see that, when you criticize, you may not even be meaning to criticize another person. You may be meaning to just make a suggestion, and that person then perceives what you're doing as a threat. Oh my gosh, you're saying I'm wrong. You're saying I'm not doing this right. You're saying that what I was intending on doing isn't working. And then they go into fight, flight, and freeze, and the situation escalates. So you've probably, you can probably recall situations where that's happened with you as well, right?
On a personal and a professional level. I'm laughing, I'm thinking because I don't know necessarily what's going on where you are, but I heard some dishes. And
Yep, yep. You heard them.
yeah, and we moved from Mexico where had been spending a lot of time, and now my office when I'm back in DC is in the corner of a 1,100 square foot apartment where
Hmm.
dishes have to be done when remember, and Camila walked through, right?
Right.
The last time I was on, it happens. So yes, I've had those conflicts. I think the interesting one of the interesting parts that I wanted to ask you about is there any way, because you said it happens within
Hundredths of a second. Yeah,
nanoseconds,
right.
right?
Two
Whatever
one
that
hundredths of a
is.
second. Right.
Is there any way to stop that from happening?
So you can't stop it from happening because that's your reaction. But what you can be, and that what we teach in mind shifting, in the conflict and collaboration book, is that you can become self-aware. And so I'm going to stick with when it happens, is that, this just before we become self-aware, there's one more piece of this to understand, and that is the role that a part of our brains take. The part of the brain is called mirror neurons, and those brains are exist in mammals, but they've been highly developed in people, and we have this survival instinct to mirror what another person is doing.
Mm,
And it's not so much the words that they're doing, we're mirroring much more their emotions. So when we see another person who's doing something wrong and we give them advice, and they take that as a threat, and then the fact that they've taken it as a threat, then our mirror neurons kick in and say, oh my gosh, this person thinks I'm threatening them. I better react in fight, flight, freeze also. And then that person detects we're in fight, fight, freeze modes, and then it escalates for them, and those battles then escalate, and that can't help but happen in management and interpersonal relations, with your kids, with sales, in pretty much every aspect of our lives. And so by default, when we're around people who are happy, achieving, um, successful, we tend to pick up on them being happy, achieving,
Mm,
successful also, and then they pick up on us being happy, achieving, successful, and that escalates. When we're next to somebody or we're around people who are angry, who are avoiding getting involved in things, who are upset, who are angry at us, we can't help but pick up on that. Then they pick up on us, and we pick up on that, and it's this network effect that positive feedback loop that grows. And so when you say, can we stop that? We can't stop it initially from happening,
mm,
but what we can do is we can realize, first of all, when it's happening with us, and we can go through the effort of calming ourselves down.
mm.
And so
It's
that's the first step.
that's so interesting. I mean, I'm relating it to uh, I believe in coaching, and I have had a coach for several years, and I think at some point you generally kind of uh, you know things run their course, and so I've been without a coach for a little while,
Hmm.
and I felt a little untethered, and I started working with a coach today,
Oh,
and I can already feel more grounded. I got to go to a session. There was 10 or 11 other business owners there, and I was learning and listening, um, and so I think being around people, and then on the flip side, geez, my beloved Washington Redskins were, a game away from the Super Bowl last year, and now they just can't win a game. And so I'm wondering, and can you relate this to sports? How you could just go, you can just a season can unravel on a team, and you can get a win, and that's how you go on a winning streak, right?
right,
You
right.
get a win, you go on that streak because you get that mojo back. But can you relate what you're saying a little bit to just like to sports or teams, how just one win can change the course, but if you don't get that win, you're still just going downhill.
Well, you're going downhill by default, but you can turn yourself around, or you can have a coach, a mentor, turn yourself around. And
Mhm.
the first step to that is quieting those voices in your head that are saying, I just lost another game, I just
Right.
lost a point. I think every elite athlete does this. And in individual sports, you can see it even more readily because you see them before a point, before they take the ball. You can see them kind of visually, take a breath, take a step in a certain way. You see a baseball hitter goes through a routine before they get in, before they get in the box. You see a pitcher goes through a routine before they throw their pitch, to get their mind off of what's happened in the past and get their mind on the next thing.
Mm.
and
Yeah.
we we do that. We can do that in to ourselves also, in business, or with with all relationships.
With people who listen to Breaking the Grade, my other show, know that I reference this a lot, but the 2019 Washington Nationals,
Hmm.
they were 19-36, and so this team was in trouble, and their manager, Davey Martinez, who was always a glass half full guy. He was a bench coach for many years. So, bench coaches always have to be they're Don
Right.
Zimmer, like
Yep.
they're always got great attitudes. And so Davey told the team, Davey, my friend, told the
Mm.
team, um, just go 1-0 today. We're not going to get to 36 and
Right.
36 overnight. You can only win one game at a time.
Hmm.
And that became the mantra for the 2019 World Series champions, Washington
Wow.
Nationals.
One day.
And it worked.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I've got a great shirt that just says "Go 1-0 today." And quite often I talk to um, a lot of people in the Ed Sales Elevation experience that like just go out and get one win,
Yep.
and see how that feels. And we're talking a lot about it here at IEI,
Hmm.
um, because those small school districts, while they don't have the 200,000 kids that Montgomery County Public Schools
Mm.
does, you can get in there and you can start to really learn about yourself and your product,
Right.
and that's helpful. So
Yep.
get yourself, a win, just go 1-0,
Mhm.
and then you can start stacking those wins.
Yep. So that's about the internal battle, and that's kind of calming yourself and building yourself up. The next part of it is what you're doing with the other person. And to a
Mhm.
certain extent, by having that feeling in and of yourself, sales or influence is really, to a large extent, the transfer of emotion. When you're confident and happy and uh, playful and looking to get more information, the other person feels that and the other person starts mimicking you, and that by itself is helpful. The next thing in building helpful, in that next helpful thing, is to work on building rapport and gathering information. And so that process of, first of all, putting yourself in the mindset of, like, okay, I'm calm, I want to move forward. And then it's like, I'm not going to judge this person. I'm not going to try to tell them what to do. I'm not going to try to order them. What I'm going to do right now is just concentrate on what do I have to do to connect with this other person and
Mm.
build rapport that way in the conversation. And you can do that either by uh, whatever the topic is that you're working on. What problems are you having in your district, or um, you know uh, what do you want to accomplish, or by talking about other subjects such as baseball, or whatever they're,
The weather.
the weather, whatever they're interested in, establishing rapport, and then from rapport gathering information and being clear emotionally that you're gathering information because you're curious. You're not gathering information for the purpose of getting them to do something, because
Mm.
they will detect if you're just asking them questions so that you can make your point, or if you're gathering information and asking them questions because you're genuinely interested in them. And that's the second stage is rapport and information gathering. And then the third stage is is finding some common ground and working towards some resolution that meets both of your goals. And so, with you're trying to influence another person, what is it that you want to accomplish? That's really interesting. Here's something that I'd like to accomplish. Let's see if we can both, meet both of our goals. And so those are really the three steps. First, calming yourself. Second, establishing questions to establish rapport. um, Third, well, 2A is asking questions to gather information. Three, establishing common ground. And then 3B is really using that common ground to move towards solutions that meet both of your needs.
I would imagine that it is possible, and I always think this is helpful, to see all of those steps in your mind before you enter into that potential situation. Because I believe that you can think through all of those steps, uh, probably with a certain degree of, positivity. Like, okay,
Hmm.
I think they're going to react this way. I think we can talk about this. I think this might be the middle ground. So is that like, uh, a good idea to take some time and kind of play it out first?
Well, what I would suggest to people is that there's a downloadable here, okay, that basically can walk you through the process. So we call it the 30-second conflict de-escalator, and it takes you through those three steps. Questions that you can ask yourself to calm yourself down, or statements that you can make to yourself,
Mm.
questions that you can ask for another person in order to build rapport. Other types of questions where you can ask them in order to get information, questions to help you and them move to common ground, and then questions to start getting you to move towards solutions. And these are all things that are uh, gone into in much greater depth in the book, but having a checklist like this, I think, would be very valuable.
Yeah, I like that. Um, is there such thing as
Mhm.
good conflict?
No, why would conflict ever be good?
I don't
Why
know.
would you say that?
Well, I was thinking of,
Conflict is something you should avoid at all costs, right?
I feel like you're asking me that in a rhetorical way. I don't know.
Maybe
Is
even
there's
satirical. Maybe even satirical way. I don't know.
I don't know. Like I so I'll play along here. I feel like there's at least for myself, okay,
Hmm.
and maybe people in your audience are at some points like me. Um, I'm not very good at conflict.
Hmm.
So look at that, ding ding ding. Somebody
Wow.
grabbed your QR code.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it's Alvin. Maybe it's your
Mhm.
wife. She's done with the dishes, right?
Right.
Uh, but I'm not so good with conflict.
So
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 maybe practicing it.
so I'm thinking that really there are so many conflicts where and we can think about things that we've done in the past where we started off, arguing with another person, and we ended up coming up with something that was better than either one of us could have come up with.
Hmm.
And really the steps to go through, and that's what you're leading to, that I was rebuffing in my own comedic fashion.
Yes,
But where you're
I
leading to
missed
is
the comedy though.
right. Is, if going through those three steps of calming yourself, building rapport, and then building common ground are the ways to take those conflicts and move them forward. And I'm looking at the time, and I think that's what I'd like to leave people with, is that you can follow those steps. You can um, that practically any interaction that you're having with another person could be a conflict or is a conflict because you're both trying to get some point across and influence each other, and those two could conflict. But then when you pause to match the way you're coping with it out of genuine interest for the other person, and showing a degree of playfulness and curiosity, you're triggering their mirror neurons to react in kind. And you can let the other person know what you want, because people respect other people who let them know, what your goals are in addition to them. You don't have to be aggressive about it, but it's like, well, I'm thinking that I want you to do so and so because I think it's in your best interest. But what do you want to get out of this? And then you can be collaborative without giving in. You can achieve what you want and have the other person achieve what they want through a process. And that's what that's what I'm trying to do in the book, because so many conflicts that we end up with, become destructive conflicts, is to teach the techniques so that in some cases there is no conflict, and in other cases the conflict that initially started as a conflict becomes a constructive conflict, and both sides are tighter more tightly connected, and feel that they ended up with something better than they could have come up with on their own.
You're we have a one David Shea who's making a asking us to make a push for using the QR code. So thank you, David, for the reminder. The QR code is there, and honestly, I think that um, anybody who can download this lead magnet, and I will do that as well. It will be helpful as you approach your next challenging situation. I know that we're running out of time here, but here's the beautiful thing, Mitch. It's 4:29 in the East. If we go a minute too long, we're not going to get knocked off by the news at 4:30. I wanted to ask you one last question.
Okay.
What about, we talked about conflicts in person
Hmm.
with other people,
Hmm.
talked about conflicts in our head with ourselves. What about when you've got keyboard warriors? What about conflicts when somebody sends you a nasty text message or a nasty email? Can you talk through how somebody might handle that?
Well, it obviously depends. Okay, it depends on, to a large extent, on whether you think it's worthwhile engaging. And so I'll go back to that self-awareness is your first reaction is to get angry, and you're never going to have a great reaction from anger. So, so using